The seasons are changing and my GreenStalks, they're changing too. Hey folks, if we haven't met before, my name is Tara. I garden in the Bay Area, and if you're all about GreenStalks, you're in the right place because I have got 12 GreenStalks and I've got loads of tips and tricks in a playlist that I've curated just for you. I'll put a link to it over here as well as at the end of this video. But today is all about fall gardening. Now I've already started taking apart my first tower because we're going to be amending these and then we're going to be filling them up chock full with leafy greens. So let me show you what I've done so far and then we'll come back here. It's time to start setting up my GreenStalks for fall, and the way that I am doing it, because I've already unstacked them and sort of refreshed them once at the beginning of the summer season. The fall garden is not as aggressive as the summer garden as far as nutrients and other things, so I'm just going to be sort of refreshing the soil in place. So I take down all of these one by one. I'm doing one at a time, not everything in one day, because I want to pace myself. And I'm going to refresh each tier. You can see here that the soil level has depressed some. It's produced some nice large plants over summer, some nice fruits for me. And it has also compressed because I use a lot of compost in my GreenStalks. So that tends to decompose and compress over time. So let me show you what I'm filling it up with. Behind my GreenStalks, over here behind the greenhouse, actually, I've always got this galvanized bin that is full of GreenStalk approved soil by me. And yeah, it's a DIY mix that comprises mainly of 3 components. I've got peat moss. You can use Coco-Coir if you're not comfortable using peat moss. And then 1 part of vermiculite plus perlite. So I usually go heavier on the perlite. You can see I'm running low. And then 1 part of my homemade compost. Now, I have really rich compost. So these totes all contain compost that I have been collecting and sifting for the past few weeks or so. It is very, very rich, you guys. Actually, a lot of it is vermicompost because there were tons of worms at the bottom of the compost bin that I was clearing for this one particular. I throw in some scraps over here just to feed any worms that might be here. They prefer the fresh food. But yeah, these are always available to me because when I want to make my homemade DIY potting mix, I want to have my homemade compost ready to go. It's a real pain to have to do it kind of on the fly when I want to make my soil. So I always have these stashed and ready. So that makes my soil making process that much easier. So one tool that I find really handy, because I make loads of homemade soil, is this auger. So I use this, it kind of spins around and it mixes it all up for me. Definitely use a mask, especially the perlite kicks up a lot of dust and you don't want that in your lungs. But yeah, it makes this a breeze to mix, because that's probably the hardest part about making your own DIY potting mix, is mixing all that soil together. And if you don't have that, just go in there with your hands and some gloves and then mix it all together. So one thing I always do whether I'm restacking or whether I'm just sort of backfilling the soil, is I will always clean out these gray discs. See how dirty they are? And I've got one more problem with them. For some reason, black widows like to live in these gray saucers over time. We have such a hot, dry climate here in California. And they scurry away. I mean, they're not really dangerous as long as you're wearing gloves and you don't bother them too much. But you can actually, yeah, there you go. You can see one over there. Yeah, and he'll run away. But yeah, just make sure you wear gloves, guys. Be safe. I do leave the roots and things here because they will decompose over time. But I do loosen up the soil just a little bit. So for example, this one, I'll just sort of break off the roots and I'll maybe bury it and just loosen the soil in general. The holes at the bottom of these tiers do not block up usually. It's the ones that are in the gray saucers, the gray discs, that get blocked up, and this one as well. So you want to clean the top reservoir, you want to clean the gray discs, but these are usually fine. The other thing that I add to each of the tiers is about half to 1 cup of slow release fertilizer. This is the first time that I'm using this particular brand. I usually use Espoma's Garden Tone or Plant Tone, but this one I'm not that impressed. This one Costco has every year, and yeah, to me it looks mostly like alfalfa pellets, in which case I can just get a bag of alfalfa pellets and make my own. It actually smells like alfalfa pellets. I haven't looked at the ingredients. Let's take a look. Yep, there it is, alfalfa meal. That's the first ingredient. And then they've got some fishbone meal, some potassium sulfate, and some kelp. I guess the fishbone meal is for the phosphorus, so you can get some bone meal and throw it in there, along with some alfalfa meal that you can really pick up for a lot cheaper at the feed store, which is kind of what I'm going to do next time. Not going to spend money on this. Now, the soil in these has gotten pretty hydrophobic. Look at that. So I'm going to be wetting it down nicely, thoroughly, mixing it in with my hori hori tool as I do the watering so that it really gets in there and it doesn't stay hydrophobic like it is right now. Now, if you don't mix it in, your water is just going to kind of go right through. So make sure that as you're filling up the water in these tiers, you're actually mixing them properly. And then after that, I'm going to be layering it with some fresh soil as well as some slow release fertilizer. So with each of these tiers, I'm going to be putting maybe about a half cup full of slow release fertilizer. Just eyeball it, kind of scratch it into the surface. Now I'm going to be planting leafy greens, so nitrogen is really important. So I'm glad that this alfalfa meal, which is very high in nitrogen, is going to be right there and available when my little plants start to grow. And then I'm going to be covering it up all the way to the tippy top. It's really, really important, especially if you're starting seeds. You've got to come all the way to the top. Do not skimp because it is going to depress. In fact, there we go. Now I'm satisfied. So fill this thing up with soil as much as you possibly can. And do this for all the others. Now I have left a couple of plants in here. There's a little strawberry plant in here. I didn't have the heart to pull it up. I'm going to let it be. And then I had a few celeries. Now, celery is a cool weather plant, so I figured, you know what, let it grow. But for the rest of the tiers, I'm pretty much going to be planting lettuce. I'm going to be doing a little bit of spinach on the topmost tier, and I'm going to be doing Swiss chard at the bottom tier. Now, I've made this very specific choice that I am only going to be planting leafy greens that are not brassicas in this particular tower, because brassicas, so things like kale, broccoli, collards, etc., they tend to be very prone to aphids as well as the white butterfly. So I'm going to be covering up the tower that I'll be planting brassicas in with the insect netting. But for this one, I'm going to leave it without the cover, which means I do not want any caterpillars or aphids in them, so I will not be planting any brassicas. I always leave a little depression in the center because I'm going to be putting my gray disc here. So I like to leave a little depression. And I also push down the soil around the corners here because that will help my next tier sit nicely on top of it without getting all clogged up with soil. All right, this is done. I'm going to water it in properly and then we're going to finish the rest. All right, and we're all set. Now, the most important thing probably when you're stacking your green stalks is to make sure that each level is completely horizontal before you proceed to the next one. In fact, for this, I went up 2 tiers and I noticed it was just not sitting right. It was looking a little slanty. Trust your eyes. And then eventually what I found out after trying to clean out all the little feet underneath, maybe there was some dirt stuck in there. I don't know, maybe it was bent out of shape. I couldn't figure it out. Eventually realized that I had not put it properly on the ultimate spinner. One of the feet was a little bit sticking up, and that's what caused the whole tower to bend over, if you will, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But yeah, with each level that goes up, the further down your tilt is, the more drastic your tilt at the top will be. So just make sure that that is right from the beginning, because if you don't, then everything is going to go wrong with this green stalk. You're going to have watering issues. You're going to have dry soil in portions. You're going to have over wet soil in other portions. It's just a mess. So yeah, make sure, use a spirit level if you need to make sure that each level is perfectly horizontal. All right, now let's go ahead and plant these up. But first, let me talk about what I am planting in this green stalk. So when I plant up my green stalks, I like to think about functionality as well as beauty. So I am producing vegetables to consume, or leaves. And I'm also doing something for my mental health. I want a beautiful green stalk. So I like to think about it, the best analogy that I've got is like a Christmas tree. So you've got all the bigger plants at the bottom, tapering off to the smaller plants on the top. And then you've got your Christmas lights, which are little pops of color that you want to intersperse all over your green stalk. And that's where my flowers come into the picture. So what I'm going to be planting is, if you notice that I've got 5 tiers here, the top 3 are leaf tiers, so they are shorter, and then the bottom 2 can actually hold some larger plants. So I'm going to be starting with Swiss chard at the bottom. Those can get pretty big. And then in the next level up from there, I'm going to be planting some head lettuce. I've already got them started in some starting trays here, but because head lettuce doesn't have very deep roots, I'm thinking it can share with something, and that something is going to be some beautiful teddy bear dill. And then on the top 3, I'm going to be starting seeds, and they're all going to be lettuce. Actually, no, I take that back. They're going to be lettuce, and on the topmost tier, I'm going to have actually some spinach. And I'm going to keep the colors sort of green, green, red, green, green. So I'm going to plant some reddish lettuce in the middle tier and then green, green on the top. Won't that look pretty? All right, let's go ahead and plant these. And I'm going to be using the seed houses to start my seeds. They are amazing. They actually work really, really well. I highly recommend them as an accessory. Let's go ahead and plant these up. So I've got my Swiss chard in a little baggie. And this is a little tip for you guys. You want to make sure that the seeds that you're using in your green stalk are viable. And if you're not really sure, I would actually recommend that you try to start them as soon as possible before you plant them in your green stalk, so that you actually know that they're going to germinate. And what I've got here is some Swiss chard seeds that are in a little moist paper towel that have been sitting in this little bag for about 3 days now on my kitchen counter. And if you look really closely, you can see that a lot of them have little white tails. Can't see so well. I've got too many things going on here. I don't want to spill my seeds. Let's look at it more closely again. There we go. So you can see the little white tails. That means they've started germinating, and that means they're top-notch quality. So I'm going to plant these in the bottom tier, and then of course I've got my butter crunch lettuce, my favorite head lettuce. It's a loose leaf lettuce. That's going to go in the next tier up. And then I've got this, which is a red salad bowl lettuce. That's going to go in the middle. I've got Marvel of the Four Seasons, and this is also kind of a reddish lettuce. It's kind of a reddish greenish lettuce. That's going to go on the second tier from the top. And on the topmost tier, I've got to plant up my Bloomsdale long-standing spinach. So this is actually from GreenStalk. It's one of those free seed packs that comes with every purchase that you make. And only recently realized that the seeds that they provide us with are actually seeds that will grow well in your GreenStalk. So like the dill that they provide is a bouquet dill, and that's a small size dill. I don't know why I didn't think that the seeds are actually good candidates for the GreenStalk. All right, let's plant these up. So ideally, I probably want to have no more than 3 Swiss chard plants per pocket, maybe even less. But hey, I am going to plant a whole bunch because I've sprouted a whole bunch. And maybe I will dig some up and transplant them to another part of my garden. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll eat it as baby chard. I don't know. We'll find out. But the other thing that you want to do is you want to have your labels handy. Do as I say, not as I do. And I am actually going to be labeling this afterward because I think I'm going to remember. You want to top it with a little bit of soil, wet it down, and then put those seed covers on. Be careful when you do this. You don't want to scatter the seeds too much. Ideally, I should be misting this, but these are some pretty big seeds, so I think it should be okay. And then the seed covers. They look like little jewel cases, don't they? So pretty. And we're done with the first level. All right, let's go ahead and plant up our butter crunch lettuce. I've got about 3 or 4 plants in each of these. Yes, you do have to thin these if you want to get a head. Otherwise, they're just going to be all cramped together and they just won't form a head. All right, all planted up. And remember the pops of color we talked about? Well, I have a couple of lemon marigold plants that I'm going to kind of stick in with the celery. I should have actually planted some more flowers before I planted the seeds. It's too late now. I'm going to disturb them. So marigolds are going to have to do. But they grow really large, so hopefully they won't choke out the celery. Let's put my irrigation back on. My little DIY irrigation. I did buy the clips from GreenStalk though. All right, turn it on slightly. I'll have to check the speed and things like that over the next few days. And, oh, by the way, I have got a little video that I put out recently on this little hack, which I'm using to replace this little gunky arrangement that I've got going here. This is so much nicer and cleaner. So check out that video as well. I ran out of seed houses, unfortunately. I don't have enough for all of them, but we'll do a little experiment, shall we? We'll do alternating seed houses and we'll see whether it makes much of a difference or whether I'm able to keep up with my watering, especially in this heat. And speaking of heat, there's one last thing. Yep, I'm going to keep these covered with an umbrella until they germinate. Really, really important and makes a big difference. So yeah, give your little baby seeds and seedlings some shade, especially if you're still in the middle of summer. I hope you enjoyed this video, folks, and I hope you will follow along with me because I've got more GreenStalks to plant up. And definitely check out my channel with all the hacks on how to get the most out of your GreenStalks. Until next time, live green and love your greens.